In a similar vein to the previous example, in this movie we'll see how we can go beyond the obvious usage of the pattern overlay layer effect and apply a pattern both to the text and its extruded shadow. My first task is to create that extruded shadow. I'll come to the type layer, press Command J to duplicate that layer. I'll then right click to the right of the layer name and convert that to a shape. Command or Control T to put a transformation rectangle around that shape. Press my right arrow once, my down arrow once, and then return to confirm that. I now want multiples of that, so to repeat the transformation, Command Option Shift or Control Alt Shift T. And do that multiple times. Then select all of those copies, right click, and merge the shapes together. Move the shape beneath the type, and I now want to change the color of the shape. Here's where we're going to run into an issue. My first instinct was to use the color overlay layer effect. This is the color that I want, but that's not going to allow me to combine that with a pattern overlay, because the color overlay is above pattern overlay in the stacking order. I could experiment with my blending modes, maybe change it to multiply, but that's going to change the color. So here's my way around this. Before we apply the pattern, I'm going to save this layer as a smart object, and then double click on the smart object badge to edit the smart object as a separate document. Here in the smart object, I'll double click to the right of its layer name and come to color overlay. So now I'll save that. We'll come back to our work in progress, and we see we now have the extruded shadow in the color that I want. And now to that smart object, I'm going to apply a pattern overlay. The pattern that I want is this diagonal line, and this is in the web patterns group. I want to make sure that it's at a scale of 100%. Actually, I want it to be a left diagonal line, come to think of it. I also want a drop shadow, just a small drop shadow, and in addition to that, I want a bevel and emboss. So the bevel and emboss is going to be quite extreme. These are the values that I used. 157 for the depth, 45 for the size. I want an angle of 80, an altitude of 10, and then I don't want any highlights, so the opacity on the highlight slider is coming all the way down to 0, and I want very strong shadows, so that slider is going all the way up to 100. Now I'm going to move to my type layer, where I want a white stroke around the type, and I'd like the weight of that stroke to be 4 pixels. I'm going to position it on the inside, blend mode of normal, and I also want a pattern. And it's here that I want to use the right diagonal line. And in this instance, I'm just going to change the scale of that to 76%. So there's the finished result. One pattern applied to the extruded drop shadow and a different pattern applied to the type itself.